Hey guys, welcome back to the Readers. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is an entitled people's story. My grandfather always said that good fences make good neighbors. After what happened last summer, I can tell you he was right about that and then some. I'm a third-generation farmer. My family has owned this land since my grandfather purchased it back in 1947. It's about 80 acres of good soil that's been producing corn, soybeans, and hay for decades. I grew up here, learned to drive a tractor before I could drive a car, and took over operations from my father about 15 years ago when his arthritis got too bad for him to handle the daily work. Our farm used to be surrounded by other farms and woodland, but over the past decade, developers have been buying up parcels to build what they call exclusive country estates for city folks looking for rural charm without actually wanting to live a rural lifestyle. Most of the new neighbors have been decent enough. They ask questions about the early morning tractor noise or the occasional smell of fertilizer, but they generally accept my explanations, and we coexist peacefully. That all changed when a woman purchased the 5-acre property that borders the eastern edge of my farmland last spring. From day one, there was something off about her. She drove a glossy black SUV with custom plates and always wore designer clothes that seemed wildly impractical for country living. Within the first week, she complained to me about the dust from my fields affecting her outdoor furniture. I tried to be neighborly. I explained the realities of living next to active farmland and even adjusted some of my operations to minimize the impact on her property when possible. I thought we had reached an understanding, but I couldn't have been more wrong. The real trouble started in early June. I had to leave the farm for 10 days to help my sister after she had surgery. My right-hand man, who's worked with me for about 20 years, kept things running while I was gone. When I returned, he immediately pulled me aside. "You need to see what's happening on the east boundary," he said, looking troubled. We drove out in my truck, and what I saw made my blood boil. A construction crew was in the process of installing an in-ground pool, and about a third of it was clearly on my property. They had cleared a section of my field, removed topsoil, and were digging out the shape of what looked to be a rather elaborate pool with an attached hot tub. I approached the foreman and explained the situation. He looked genuinely surprised and pulled out a set of plans that showed a property line that was about 30 feet farther into my land than it actually was. "This is what the homeowner provided," he said. She told us she had the survey done before purchasing. I thanked him for the information and asked if they could pause construction until we got this sorted out. He agreed, and I went straight to my house to pull out my documentation. My family has always been meticulous about record keeping. My grandfather surveyed the entire property when he bought it. My father updated the survey in the 1980s, and I had it done again about 5 years ago when some questions came up about the western boundary. I had files of deeds, surveys, and property tax documents going back decades. I also had boundary markers placed by a licensed surveyor that clearly marked where my property ended and hers began. I drove over to her house that same afternoon. She answered the door in a swimsuit and cover-up, looking annoyed at the interruption. "We need to talk about the pool," I said. "What about it?" she replied, barely hiding her irritation. I explained that a significant portion of her new pool was on my property, showed her the survey documents, and suggested we walk out together to look at the boundary markers. She laughed, actually laughed, and said, "Those old papers don't mean anything. My real estate agent assured me the property line extends to that row of trees." The row of trees she mentioned was about 25 yards onto my property. They'd been planted by my father as a windbreak for the crops. "Those trees are on my land," I explained. "They always have been. I have the surveys to prove it." She waved her hand dismissively. "Look, I've already spent thousands on this pool. You're just a farmer, and that little strip of land isn't worth fighting over. Besides, the pool improves the look of your shabby fields. You should be thanking me." I kept my cool. "I'm not looking for a fight, but that's my property, and I didn't give permission for construction. The pool needs to be relocated or removed." "I'm not moving anything," she snapped. "My attorney said possession is 9/10 of the law. The pool stays where it is." That evening, I called my attorney who had helped my family with various matters over the years. After explaining the situation, he confirmed my rights and suggested sending a formal letter demanding she cease construction, followed by legal action if necessary. He also recommended documenting everything. The next day, I set up trail cameras facing the boundary to record any further encroachment and took detailed photos of the construction. When she saw me doing this, she stormed over. "Are you spying on me? Taking pictures of my property is an invasion of privacy," she shouted. "I'm documenting trespassing on my land," I replied calmly. "And these cameras are on my property, facing my property." "Nobody cares about your stupid farm anyway," she sneered. This area is changing. People like me are the future here, not outdated farmers clinging to the past. You should sell this dump to a developer and get with the times." Over the next few weeks, despite my attorney sending a formal cease and desist letter, the construction continued. She completed the pool, added extensive landscaping that encroached even further onto my land, and began hosting loud pool parties that sometimes lasted until the early morning hours. Some of her guests would park their cars on the edge of my field, crushing crops. I documented everything and filed complaints with the county about the noise and trespassing. I discovered she hadn't even bothered to get the proper permits for the pool construction. The county sent inspectors who issued violations, but she paid the fines without addressing the actual problems. My attorney filed for an injunction, but the court date was still months away due to a backlog of cases. Meanwhile, summer was progressing, and I needed access to that part of my field for the upcoming harvest. One morning, I noticed water from her pool had overflowed after a heavy rain and was flooding a section of my crops. This wasn't just a boundary dispute anymore, this was actively damaging my livelihood. I consulted my attorney again, and he confirmed something important, something that would later prove crucial. Any structure built illegally on your property without permission is considered an encroachment. As the rightful property owner, you have the legal right to remove the encroachment from your land, provided you don't cause unnecessary damage and follow proper environmental regulations. He advised me to notify the county of my intentions first and ensure I followed all environmental regulations regarding water disposal. I filed the necessary paperwork, documenting my plan to remove the encroachment on my property. I waited until I knew she would be away for the day, attending some charity function in the city that she'd been bragging about to anyone who would listen. My farmhand and I rented the proper equipment, and with the guidance of a professional who knew the regulations for pool water disposal, we carefully drained the portion of the pool that was on my property. We made sure to follow all environmental guidelines, treating the water appropriately before directing it into a proper drainage system. We didn't touch any part of the structure that was on her property, only the portion that encroached on my land. Once drained, I immediately prepared the soil and planted a cover crop to clearly re-establish the agricultural use of my land. The whole operation took about 6 hours. I documented everything with time-stamped photos and videos to show we had followed all regulations and only modified structures on my own property. When she returned that evening, I was in my tractor working a nearby field. I could hear her screams from 100 yards away. Within 20 minutes, 2 police cruisers pulled up her driveway with lights flashing. An officer approached me as I was finishing up my work. I shut down the tractor and climbed down to speak with him. "We've received a complaint about vandalism of a swimming pool," he said. "Mind telling me your side of the story?" I invited him to my house where I laid out all my documentation, the boundary surveys, the cease and desist letters, the photos of the encroachment, records of the county violations, and documentation of the proper drainage procedure we'd followed. I only removed the portion of the unauthorized structure that was built on my property without permission, I explained. I have the legal right to maintain my property for agricultural use. While we were talking, another officer was speaking with my neighbor. From the increasing volume of her voice, I could tell things weren't going her way. The officer reviewing my documents nodded thoughtfully. "Seems like you've done your homework," he said. "And you're right about your property rights. We'll need to file a report, but from what I can see, you acted within your legal rights." When the officers returned to their vehicles, my neighbor stormed over to my property line, her face red with fury. "You think you've won?" she shouted. "I'm suing you for everything you have. My attorney will destroy you." I simply nodded and said, "I look forward to seeing your attorney. I have plenty of documentation." 2 days later, I received notice that she was indeed suing me for property damage, emotional distress, and a list of other claims. My attorney reviewed the lawsuit and actually chuckled. "This is going to backfire spectacularly," he said. "We'll countersue for the trespassing, crop damage, and illegal construction." The case moved faster than expected because the judge assigned to it had a farming background and understood the time-sensitive nature of agricultural operations. During discovery, things got even more interesting. We learned that she had deliberately misled the pool contractors about the property line, showing them altered documents. We also discovered she had never even consulted an attorney before building the pool, contrary to what she had claimed to me. The surveyor who testified confirmed that my boundary markers were correct and that approximately 38% of her pool had been built on my property. The pool contractor testified that he would never have started the job if he'd known about the property dispute. The most damning evidence came from her own real estate agent, who testified that he had shown her the correct property boundaries during the purchase and provided her with accurate survey documents. She had simply decided those boundaries didn't suit her plans. The judge's ruling was unequivocal. Not only was her case dismissed, but my countersuit was successful. She was ordered to properly restore any damaged portions of my land, remove any remaining encroachments, and pay damages for crop loss and legal fees. The judge was particularly critical of her deliberate disregard for property rights and county regulations. The look on her face when the judgment was read was something I'll never forget. It wasn't satisfaction I felt so much as relief that justice had prevailed. She listed her house for sale the following week. I heard from other neighbors that she couldn't handle the embarrassment of having her entitlement so publicly exposed. Before she moved, contractors came to properly remove the remaining pool structure and restore the land. I used part of the settlement money to install a proper irrigation system in that section of my field, something I'd been wanting to do for years but couldn't afford. The rest went into a fund for my nephew, who's shown interest in continuing the family farming tradition someday. This past spring, I harvested the first crop from that restored section of field, a particularly good yield of early sweet corn. As I worked the land that had once been under her illegal pool, I thought about what my grandfather used to say about respecting boundaries. He wasn't just talking about property lines, but about respecting other people and their rights. The woman who thought she could simply take what she wanted because of her wealth and status learned that some things, like respect and integrity, can't be bought. And sometimes the person you dismiss as just a farmer might teach you the most important lesson of all. The next one is a pro-revenge story. I have worked at a certain home improvement store for close to a decade now, about 8 years roughly. The first 7 was in NC before I moved up further north to be with my best friend and her husband, who I learned was pregnant with my first godchild. As such, I transferred up to a store in the area and put my nose to the grindstone. I worked garden before and did that for some months before I started to be moved from department to department as this store was low on staff. However, this was not full-time. My old HR had dropped the ball and this store believed I wanted part-time. Having already moved, I grabbed a part-time overnight job at a gym to make ends meet and continued to work, all the while asking repeatedly for full-time at the main job, and never getting a definitive word back or change. Several months into this, my goddaughter was born. As I lived with my friends during this time, and during the time of COVID, I spent quite a lot of time helping to raise her, and we became close. I would take time off that I was allotted to help look after her, and there was little problem. Half a year into this change, and I had made a good name for myself. I did not have a good deal of friends per se, but I was respected for my work ethic and willingness to help out anyone, in any department, that asked me. Enter a new assistant manager. The ASM was abrasive to staff and used to getting her way. The first I heard of her was when she outright fired a girl working the front desk because of a Playboy tag on a jacket. Myself and several other employees organized a walkout in protest of this, and succeeded in getting the store manager to reverse the decision made by the ASM. This was not our first walkout, having done this in the past when another ASM, the current's predecessor, made sexist comments about a cashier. Soon after this, I was given full-time by the ops manager, working in receiving for a cantankerous supervisor. We often did not get along, especially as my godchild got older and I took on babysitting duties while her parents worked and slept. It was not something I minded, as I adored the child. I often talked about her with my co-workers and loved to show pictures and stories. However, this was not something shared by my higher-ups. My supervisor was upset that I could not work overtime to help him, as we were the only two in receiving for the store, because of either my second job or babysitting. And soon after the second walkout, I was made aware of a rumor circulating around the store that the child was in fact my own daughter, that I had fathered outside of my friend's husband's knowledge. The source of the rumor was unknown, but my ASM had made disparaging remarks to me in the past about men taking care of children, so I had my theories. My holiday plans, asked off in advance as soon as our electronic system allowed, were canceled without explanation, both Thanksgiving and Christmas. I had never missed a major holiday since I moved north, and I had asked the same days off the year prior, and had gotten them off before the ASM arrived, strike one. And soon after this, my supervisor, whom I work closely with every day, had a positive COVID test, forcing me, per company rules, to self-isolate until I could get a positive or negative test myself. During this week, as it took a full week to find a place with enough room to give tests thanks to Omicron, I was harassed repeatedly by text and phone call by both management and my supervisor to track down an at-home test and get back to work ASAP. All the while, I had to inform everyone I was in contact with, including my friends, family, and roommates, that I had been exposed, risking their own holiday trips and plans. Strike two. Thankfully, my test was negative. A week after this, the Northeast gets slammed by a snow and ice storm. I drive a four-wheeled vehicle and so made it in, but near the end of my shift, I was made aware that my friend's husband had been injured and stranded in a car accident on the ice, and so left to get them home, and their car to a service station. To add to it all, they have lost power in their home, with an infant, leaving me with the only person they could turn to with a vehicle and power. I will admit, I had few sick hours left, but informed work that I would be out on a family emergency. For that week, I called out each day with ongoing family emergency, with snow and ice still coating the streets and power still down throughout our city, and every day I was hounded by calls from management demanding I return to work regardless. This would have not only risked my own safety, but would have stranded my family at my apartment with no way to get supplies or get home once the power returned. Strike three. I was done. Early in the morning that following Sunday, I walked into work and placed my resignation letter on H.R.S desk. That is important ladder. I had tendered it to be immediate as I live in an at-will state. Was it petty? Yes, I will freely admit that. I had given 8 years of my life to this company and asked very little in return. As I was leaving, I crossed paths with my supervisor, who asked angrily if I was finally coming back to work. I informed him of my decision to leave, ignoring his provocations, and left to go home and sleep. Several hours later, I received the gift that would ignite my semi-accidental revenge. A single text from my ASM. "We will see how long you can take care of your love child without us." Well, seems I found my probable source. My friends had been made aware of this rumor from the start. I did not hide anything from them, and did not want any kind of rumor, however unlikely, to reach them from anyone but me. They are my closest friends and compatriots, and have given me the greatest gift in the form of my godchild, whom they insist I call my niece, as I am family. Love child feels like a slur against her, and I am not cool with that, and neither are they. However, they informed me of the monumental screw-up my, now former, ASM had made. It was time for corporate HR to be made aware, and so I began to compile my evidence, the text from my supervisor, the call records and messages left, and this holy grail of a text message. If I was going to leave, I was at the very least going to give some blowback on the team that had been so willing to target me. What happened after is secondhand from friends I had still at the store, and so I cannot entirely verify all of it, but the ASM played herself. The following day, a meeting of management and supervisors was convened, where the ASM made it known that I had been fired, not self-terminated, for job abandonment and immorality. And unless I am grossly misinformed about the nature of American retail work, immorality is not a fireable event. To my supervisor's credit, he defended me to the ASM, and was fired on the spot. The store's HR rep, having earlier gotten my printed termination letter on his desk, made it known that I had indeed not been fired, but left on my own, and the ASM attempted to fire him as well, in front of the staff, and from there, it spiraled. According to my source, entire departments began to walk out, or outright quit, having had their own problems with the ASM appliances quit to a man. Garden left with their manager to work at a competitor's, as he had been working on this well before my saga began. Front desk walked out in protest, as it came out that the ASM had threatened and blackmailed several Muslim part-timers to not wear their headscarves if they wanted hours. Lumber, Receiving's main partner, quit. ProDesk joined the front desk protest as one of their number. A Sikh man had also been threatened. Cashiers, both head cashiers quit, and the other trained cashiers walked out with the desks. Ops manager had informed the district manager and quit outright before he arrived, walking out with the HR rep and my old supervisor. My source's last report of the ASM was seeing her sprinting to her car after having heard that the district staff was inbound, and the store manager was forced to shut the store down for the next 2 days, last I've heard. I've been in contact with the other injured parties, and we're compiling all the evidence we've collected, as several of the families are hiring lawyers. I suspect the company will attempt to keep this quiet. I just never suspected that anything like this would happen. I have a full-time position at the gym upcoming, and I've been enjoying the extra sleep and time I get with my family. I'm never working 56, 64-hour weeks ever again, and I will never darken the doorstep of that store again. I hope my ASM enjoyed the temporary rush of power. I suspect she won't get it ever again, at least not in manager positions. The next one is a malicious compliances story. This happened a few years ago. I no longer work with this company because this MC isn't the first time where I thought my personal health and safety was taking the back seat to the requirements of the company. I worked for a security company. My assignment was the vehicle depot lot for the gas company. My duties were to sit in an aluminum trailer shack in the corner of the lot and monitor for suspicious activity. In Philadelphia, many of these areas were targeted by catalytic converter thieves. I was also supposed to make a patrol every hour to ensure the security of the site. Other than my patrols and to use the bathroom, I was not permitted to leave the box for any reason. My uniform was my usual long-sleeve button-up shirt and long pants, but also I was required to wear a boiler suit and hard hat for safety from things I might encounter on my patrols. Originally, I only wore the boiler suit and hard hat to do my patrols because it was July and the air conditioner in the box didn't work. However, my site supervisor came for inspection and threatened to fire me if I wouldn't wear the boiler suit and hard hat while sitting in the box as well. So I did. The end of July, beginning of August 2022 was one of the worst heat waves in Philadelphia history. On a good day, it was 140 degrees plus in the box as it was made of aluminum and sitting in direct sunlight for the duration of my shift. 3 days in and I passed out standing in the men's room from advanced heat stroke. The gas company staff called an ambulance for me. I was airlifted to the hospital. Traffic in this part of the city was notoriously terrible late afternoon, early evening, and every second counted. At the hospital, my body temperature was 105.6, and my pulse was a blistering 147. It took doctors 2 days to get my temperature back to normal and address all of the damage the excessive heat had done to my body. While I was getting life-saving care at the hospital, my abandoned post was infiltrated by 3 men who stole the catalytic converters from 18 vehicles. The parent company was livid, and when I was inquired as to why I wasn't at my post when the theft occurred, my doctor at the hospital took the phone and informed them of my condition upon arrival at the hospital. In the aftermath, I was reassigned. The broken air conditioner in the box was replaced by a 40,000 BTU unit that required a separate generator to power. A few weeks later, my security company lost its contract with the gas company after my replacement fell asleep in the box while the thieves returned to steal another 20 catalytic converters. The next one is an entitled people story. So, this happened yesterday, and I'm still trying to process the sheer audacity of it all while also smug at the result. It's Ramadan, and like most malls here, they open at 3 p.m. on weekdays and stay open until 3 a.m. Plenty of time for everyone to shop, eat, and do whatever they need. But apparently, that wasn't good enough for one ultra-entitled Karen who thought she was above the rules. I got to the mall around 2:30 p.m. to grab a good parking spot before the pre-iftar rush to catch some shopping for my wife. A few other cars had already started forming a queue outside the parking entrance, all of us patiently waiting for security to open the gates at 3 p.m. sharp. Everything was normal. Until Her Royal Highness Karen rolled up in her big black pickup truck with 2 private security guards in tow. She pulls up right next to the security gate, completely ignoring the queue, rolls down her window and tells the mall security, "Open the gate now, I have things to do." The guard politely tells her that the mall isn't open yet and that she needs to queue like everyone else. But of course, Karen doesn't take no for an answer. Karen: "Do you know who I am? Do you see my guards? I don't wait in lines." She then literally waves at her guards who step out with their guns like they're about to escort her to the throne room, and they start demanding that security let her through. The mall security guys, to their credit, stood their ground. Security: "Ma'am, no one enters before 3 p.m. Please queue like everyone else." Karen scoffs and pulls out her phone to record, demanding to speak to the manager. At this point, the rest of us in line are just watching in anger and disbelief, further amplified due to lack of energy and sheer heat. A few minutes later, the mall manager shows up, looking visibly annoyed. He walks right up to Karen's car and, in the most CEO voice imaginable, tells her, "Ma'am, your guards do not dictate mall policy. If you want to enter, you wait like everyone else. Now take your guards and move to the back of the line." Karen: "This is unacceptable. I'll be calling my husband and reporting you." Manager: "You can report me after you move your car." Absolute legend. The best part? Karen actually shut up and sulked off to the back of the line, her guards looking completely useless. Moral of the story? Even if you bring your own goons, mall security still doesn't care. Happy Ramadan, everyone. Don't be like Karen. Have respect for people. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again tomorrow.